A good group here today. Hi, everybody. So you'll see this is not my usual space. You don't get to see my pretty bookcase. I normally have this gorgeous bookcase behind me, but I'm traveling for work and I'm actually in a lounge in an airport to get this interview in because I could not miss it. This trip got planned after I booked with Bonnie. And so I love this and I wanted to be here. So this is where we are. And I was delayed an hour. So I was crossing my fingers this happened. Okay. Welcome to our LB's Lover of Books author chat. I'm so excited for this one. I've been waiting and waiting. We've had this on the books for a while now, and it's today. So I am pumped. And to introduce this wonderful debut novelist, Bonnie Garmus is a copywriter and a creative director who has worked widely in the fields of technology, medicine, and education. She's an open water swimmer, a rower, we'll talk about that later, and a mother of two pretty amazing daughters, born in California and most recently from Seattle. She lives in London with her husband and her dog, 99. Is it a surprise? Her dog's name is 99. I was so excited to read that, and we'll get to that later too. Lessons in Chemistry is a New York Times bestseller, GMA book club pick. Parade says, meet Elizabeth Zott, a formidable, unapologetic, and inspiring scientist in the 1960s, California, whose career takes a detour when she becomes an unlikely star of a beloved TV cooking show in this novel. New York Times says Lessons in Chemistry is an irresistible, satisfying, and full of fuel. It reminds you that change takes time and always requires heat. I love it. Welcome to this book chat. Thank you for being here, Bonnie.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here with everybody.
So where are you right now? Are you in the UK?
Yeah, I'm in London in my very tiny flat without heat.
Has it gotten cold already there, or is it?
It's getting cold. Yeah, and the heat is, it's a problem.
Well, hopefully you have lots of blankets to pile on.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this debut. I mean, how old were you? And if you don't want to talk age, that's fine. But where were you in life when this book was published?
I was working and I was 64 when it was published. You know, I finished it when I was 62, but publishing takes so long. It's incredible because you kind of think you finished it and you send off a file, and I know I've worked in technology, you expect it to be, done in a day, and they're like, oh no, we have to do all this other stuff first. So that process takes 18 months. It's just torture, really, but it has to happen. It turns out that they have to have a lot of people read it before they publish it, so they have stuff, reviews and things ready to go. I didn't know that. There's so much I didn't know.
Well, so where were you? What were you doing that made you say, oh, I want to write a novel? Because this is your first one. It's your debut. So tell us about that process.
Well, I've been writing since I was 5. I did write my very first novel at 5, and it is really, really bad. It's page long. It is unfortunately about a princess, and it had no plot. And my children found it one day in our basement, and they've never let me forget it or live it down. And then I wrote another novel when I was 12, and my librarian put it in the library. That one was actually like 200 pages. No one ever checked out that novel. I know, because I checked every single day to see if somebody had maybe checked it out. They never did. And then, I went to college and then I went to work, and I've been working as a writer my entire life, but most recently as a copywriter, which is kind of a tried and true path for novelists. And, a lot of journalists and copywriters and people like that, they're always working on a novel. And that was really my story, but I found it hard to do and work full time. Anyway, this novel is novel 2.5. I wrote one and I never finished it. I wrote a second one and finished it. It got rejected 98 times. I wrote a third one, finally. Took a while.
Well, but still, that's an amazing process and perseverance. And I'm certainly glad you went down that path and that this is the product, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
What was it that prodded this particular novel? What's the seed? What got us to Elizabeth?
Well, first, I should say that very first novel I never finished. I only got about halfway through. Elizabeth was in that novel, but she was only present for a paragraph. I really didn't know much about her. But I was in a meeting one time it was a technology meeting, and like many technology meetings, I was the only woman in the room, and I was presenting my ideas, my concepts for a campaign. And after I'd done so, there was dead silence, and then there was a little murmuring between the other people, and then a vice president suddenly said, I know, I've got some ideas. And he presented my ideas that I had just presented, and then we're still up in a PowerPoint display as his own ideas. And everyone said, wow, you are so smart, to him. And I just couldn't believe it. So I was sitting there going, seriously, do you not see me sitting here? Anyway, I left the meeting pretty mad, and I went back to my desk, and I was on a tight deadline. But instead of working, I wrote the first chapter of Lessons in Chemistry. So I think this is a really good way to channel anger. I call it constructive anger now.
I think it's perfect therapy, actually.
Yeah.
And it sounds, have you read Kirsten Miller's The Change? Okay, there's a character in there, Harriet, that maybe you incarnate. I'm just going to say out there she is worked for an ad agency and the exact same thing. I mean, it could be your life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Fantastic book. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
All right. So now we have this idea. And what was your process like this time? You said last time it was rejected 98 times for the previous novel. What was this process like?
Well, this process was exactly the opposite. If there could be an opposite, this was it. So I was pretty certain that this one was also going to go nowhere. And we had been transferred. My husband's job took us to Switzerland, and then we were coming to London. I was getting a little bit tired of moving a lot. I moved a lot, and I came to London, and I had this book, Lessons in Chemistry, I'd finished about 3/4 of it. But I really felt like I was done, like I wasn't going to finish it. I was just, I don't know, it was just so much going on at that time. And I ended up taking an online course at Curtis Brown, and it was called Write to the End of Your Novel. My daughter sent me the link. And so I thought, okay, it's 200 pounds. I'll write to the end of this novel. I'll get it done. At least I'll say that I completed it. So I took that course, and I did not write to the end of the novel. But I was intrigued by Curtis Brown, and they had an in-person course in London. And I thought, wow, this will be a great way for me to meet people, because I know no one here. My husband's gone all the time. And so I decided that I would sign up for their in-person course. And I met all these other writers. There were 15 of us, and we've remained very close friends. And I kept working on the novel, and then that course was only 3 months long. It was one night a week, and we just really discussed each other's work and literature and things. And so at the end of that, Curtis Brown throws a party for their writers, and you get to meet a few of their agents. They have a lot of agents, but everyone's very nervous, and you're supposed to practice pitching your book. That night, Felicity Blunt was at that party. And she came up to me, and she started saying, I really want to talk to you. I really liked your work. And I thought, I was positive that she had mistaken me for someone else. I was so positive that I kept waiting for her. I was ready to say, I'm so sorry, but the person you want is that person. And then she finally said something about Elizabeth Zott. And I was so shocked. I could barely talk. Anyway, we talked for a long time, and I said, I'm not done with the book. And she said, well, when are you going to be done? And I just picked a month out of thin air. I said, I'll be done by June. And this was in February. And I had no idea. I was working full time, no idea if I could be done by June. But she said, okay, well, when you're done, please send it to me. Well, she called me up in April, and she said, fuck it, just send it to me. And she signed me on a partial. I wasn't done. So and then we worked on it together, and then she took it off to Frankfurt. So that's how it worked.
Well, it sounds like you had some supportive people in your group there, your daughters saying, hey, finish this, sent you the link. That's a good prod.
Yeah.
And this writing group, it sounds like that energy amongst each other was very productive. And then, just having Felicity there, I mean, it sounds like it was just a great combination.
It was really odd, because it just never works that way. And, all of us in our writing group are all trying to get agents and trying to get published. And, it could be very hard. Well, it's just brutal, honestly. It's just brutal. And so for Felicity to see what she liked and say, I'm going to sign you on a partial. I mean, literally, I was so excited when she said that as I was walking to the tube after I met with her, I accidentally called emergency services, but I didn't know. And then, you know how you butt dial someone? Anyway, I butt dialed emergency services of London, and they called me back. And they said, ma'am, is there a problem? And I said, oh, no, there's no problem. I just got signed by an agent. And they said, oh, my God, please be careful who you dial. So anyway, that's how that whole thing started. Yeah.
Maybe they thought you needed an audience to tell
Yeah,
her.
I don't know. They were not very impressed with me. But anyway, so that's how it all worked out.
Oh, that's an awesome story, though. All right, let's go ahead and dive right on into that story. And I want to start with Elizabeth's background, because she comes from a very particular upbringing. Why and how did you choose to give her those parents to see where she would become? I mean, it was obviously a conscious decision. So tell us about that, because it was a crucial part, I think, in her story.
Yeah, I think part of that was directly influenced a little bit by some friends with gay children who don't accept that their children are gay. And that's really bothered me quite a bit on the behalf of my own daughter's gay. And so it's really bothered me quite a bit when parents make a judgment about their child, especially when it's something they don't have any control over. So I wanted to actually give Elizabeth, because she is such a scientist, a religious background. However, her background is sort of that zealotry religion that I think everyone can see through. You know, even if you believe in God and you are quite religious, even most religious people know a shyster when they see one, and that's what her father was. And I wanted to have this comparison between her and her father, that she would be attractive and he was attractive, and he really wanted to sell and be on TV and be important, and she wanted nothing to do with that, and she's the one who ends up with it. And so I kind of wanted her, that would help make her be very reluctant to go on television and be this kind of person who performs.
Well, you know, sometimes negativity, like a negative environment, breeds more negativity. But in her case, it did the exact opposite. It was the type of person that would say, I don't want to be anything like my parents. And that changes her path. And I loved that about it. So let's go ahead and talk about that journey now, because part of the story is the family that you had. And then the next is maybe the family that you found or made for yourself. And so why did you choose that? And how did you choose these characters that she was going to come upon?
Well, the characters all walk on one by one. I don't work from an outline. I don't really have a lot of, I mean, I have control obviously over my keyboard, but I let people walk on, and I want to hear what other people have to say. And sometimes a character will come to me at night, you know, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, oh, I want this character in this book because this character is going to show us this side of Elizabeth Zott. And that's why I have 10 points of view. We see all sides of Elizabeth Zott. Some people despise her. Some people don't understand her. Some people adore her. Some people think she's an inspiration. Some people think she's weird. Some people, you know, think that she's just a sexual object. And so I wanted to kind of have everyone's input on her. And she's the one in the middle. She's the catalyst. She's the show here. She will touch and change everyone. She will change everyone she comes in touch with. And so that's how that developed. And, you know, again, I don't write from an outline. So when I'm writing, I kind of think of what might be happening. I create a scene, I put someone in it, and then watch for their flaws to come out, because I always try to put someone in an uncomfortable situation.
Now, so Elizabeth was obviously your first character because she showed up in that paragraph previous novel. Was there anybody else that you knew immediately that was going to be a front runner in your book, or did it just sort of, as you wrote more about Elizabeth, it just organically happened as you described it before?
I knew Madeline would be there because in that other book that I never finished, Madeline was the protagonist. She was 30 years old and she had a young child. And writing her as a child, it was fairly simple for me to do because I knew who she became as an adult. But the rest of the characters, I didn't know. I knew I wanted Elizabeth on television, and I picked chemistry and cooking because I knew she'd have to be in a home ec type job. And I wanted her to be attractive. I'd originally written her as quite plain, and it didn't work as well because back then, probably even now, if you're super attractive in the workplace, people will be jealous of you. But I just read this study. It was really disheartening that men find attractive women dumber. And so Elizabeth would get hit on more at work and they'd think that she was not as smart as she purported to be. So I wanted to have all these conflicts for her because I wanted to create a very rational and resilient woman and watch how she handled all these things in her life.
Now, I heard a little tidbit that you wrote a book of Mad when she was older. Is that still in the works? Like, I know that you wrote something, but it obviously wouldn't be the same. But have you thought to maybe take that a step further and change it up to fit after this one?
Yeah, I have. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't want to really write a sequel, to be honest, because I always think it's really important to leave when the getting's good. When people want more, you need to show yourself the door. I learned that in copywriting. You always give them just a little less than what they'd like. Okay. And that keeps interest up, but also sequels can be very disappointing. So I don't know, in the back of my head, I still know what she's doing and I know what happens, I would probably rearrange quite a bit but I'm working on a different book and I love these characters. So I'm really into that right now.
Well, do you want to talk about that or maybe at the end? Because
well,
I'm always wanting to know. I know they've been dying to hear about this. We might as well just dive right in.
Oh gosh, well, I would tell you about this book, but it's changed. I made this huge dramatic change 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, and I'm so mad at myself, but I really like it, but it changes so much. So I can't tell you because you'll read it or maybe you won't read it, but it'll come out and you'll go, that's not at all what she said was about. It is a very organic process for me. And I think some writers write this way and some writers are very smart and organized and they have an outline. And I just can't work that way. And I never have been able to.
Can we say it's fiction?
Oh yeah, it's everything I write is fiction, believe me, except for the dog, everything is fiction.
Still looking historical fiction, or is that maybe what's changing?
Okay, so I have to confess that when I wrote Lessons in Chemistry, I did not know that writing about the 60s would be considered historical fiction. But get a load of this. My editor told me that if I write about the 90s, that's also historical fiction. Where does the madness end? I don't. Right. So
like, do we get a decade? What's the limit?
I don't know. It's really interesting because I told her I think the next one is set in the 80s and 90s, and she said, "Oh, so historical fiction again?" And I went, "Seriously?" I mean, when I think of historical fiction, I think of wagon trains and muskets. I don't know. But yeah. So I guess it's historical fiction.
So what would you want this genre to be? Like, where on the shelves would it be?
I think I fit between literary and commercial. And I think that it's a great spot to be in, but no one can ever define it. So they kind of call it, well, she's sort of literary commercial.
Well, I think you just need to be on a table right up front, just like Bonnie Garmus table.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Oh, well, we have a question that is right on point because we're talking about Elizabeth, and Kirsten wants to know, Elizabeth's such a strong, independent woman. Is there a particular woman in your life who inspired this character in these ways, or someone from, historically that you pulled from?
The quick answer is no. When I was in that meeting that day, I came back to my desk and I just sat there asking myself, how many more times are women going to sit in meetings like this where they're talked over or mansplained to or whatever? How many? It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of everyone's time. And so that day I thought, I'm going to create this woman who does not accept irrationality and who is very rational in her ideas and her thoughts and is not afraid to say no to people, who doesn't second guess herself. So in other words, I was writing my very own role model for myself. But as I wrote her, it really has occurred to me, I mean, especially now that the book's been published, that Elizabeth Zott is in all of us, because there aren't any of us who haven't been put down or pushed aside or whatever. You know, it doesn't matter really, even if you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter what your background is. You've suffered. I'm pretty sure you have. And so, you know, I think she has been really instructive for me of how she conducts herself under, you know, great pressure and terrible experiences.
Well, she was an inspiration, and that's been throughout our author chat group. Just her strength of character has really been such a point from the beginning to the end. She never wavered, and we all love that about her. So when we talk about inspiration, I know you said you didn't get it, but I was feeling Ruth Bader Ginsburg throughout this entire novel, because they're about the same age and going through quite a bit of the same discrimination along the way. And I think a lot of us have these people in our minds that that she totally could have been. Why? I know you said the home economic reason. Was the chemistry and the cooking always the front runner, or did you consider other methods for her to get this point across?
It was always the front runner. And believe me, I really, really regretted that decision when I realized that I had to teach myself 1950s, 1960s chemistry from a textbook.
Okay, tell us that.
I got a book off of eBay, and also I used a children's chemistry, the golden book of chemical experiments for children from the 40s. They have banned this book. Okay, you should not ban books, but maybe this one, because children were apparently blowing themselves up, and so was I. And this required visits from the fire department. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Tell me the story. I need to hear the blow-ups. What happened?
I was conducting a few things. There's a scene in there about pistachios and how volatile they are. Well, they are. You know, I really think you should avoid pistachios in a highly humid environment and with heat. Please do that, because the flames are going to be much bigger than you think. And there were a couple of really standard experiments that I did. And I was really surprised. I started thinking about little kids doing these experiments. I was like, wow. But, you know, it did teach me a couple of things. And one was always have a fire extinguisher. I was doing this without a fire extinguisher. Not good. But you know what? We were renters and I was kind of carefree. And I thought, I'll be all right. No, have a fire extinguisher. Anyway, I made her a chemist, and that's why I wanted her to do something really hard. And I wanted her to be a scientist for sure, because she'd have these absolute beliefs about, you know, where evidence comes from and how you decide to move forward with things. So that's really where that whole thing came. And then I thought, chemistry, she can be on TV. Chemistry is cooking, which it is. So that's how it developed.
So the fire department really did show up?
Twice.
Well, I'm also picturing Mad in your experiences, because she was basically a free range child in so many ways. I mean, luckily she had 630 looking after her, but you sort of described her life in a lot of ways, and that she was given free reign of whatever science she wanted to do as well.
Yeah, you know, I really wanted to see what a child who is raised without limits would turn out to be, because I know. But I really wanted to see what it would be like I did not raise my children like that. Like, people are like, well, did you just let them do anything? No, I did not. But I really thought, how interesting would it be to have a mother who doesn't even flinch with what you want to read or what you think you can do, who doesn't laugh at you, or who doesn't say, honey, that's not appropriate. I really thought it would be fun to watch Elizabeth Zott try to be a mother, but also be her normal, no limits self. And what would she do, and how would she handle the very, very tough parts of motherhood?
Well, she didn't have a lot of experience seeing a good role model growing up. So all she knew was her own guide, her own ethics, her black and white version of life in a lot of ways. And it was true to character. And And I am seeing comments in the chat box that they believed your science. And I did too. I didn't feel like it was an unnatural push or, that's not right. But I appreciated that. And I loved that you did push her onto camera, because that put her in an uncomfortable position. And so she had to, find her strengths there as well.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know what your writing schedule's like. Rosemary.
I try to get up early, and then I write early. I start my day reading what I wrote the night or the day before, and then I either edit it, or sometimes I cross a lot out and start over, or I start thinking about how the story is evolving, and I work for 4 or 5 hours. And then it's like 10 o'clock. And then I have to do all of the rest of my work. So, and right now it's just work for the book, but it's a lot of work. So that's my day. That's how I do things. I just constantly revise. It's not uncommon for me to revise one sentence 15, 20 times until I read everything out loud, until I can hear it and it makes the transition work or whatever. It's what I learned in copywriting, and I just keep doing the same thing over and over because it worked for me in copywriting. And all these famous novelists were once copywriters. I mean, Salman Rushdie and Kurt Vonnegut and, Amy Tan and all sorts of people, James Patterson. And if you look at their writing, you kind of go, yeah, I can see you're a copywriter, because the writing has to be very exact. And so that's really what, how it all starts.
So like in the morning, you said you read it, or do you read it out loud to yourself, or is it just, because some people say they need to hear it to see how it's going to sound. Is that something you do, or is it you just read it in your head and make those copies?
I read it in my head, and then as I'm working on it, I'll go like this, I'll read it to myself. And then when I'm really certain that I've got it, I'll read it out loud and I'll go, oh, well, see, now it's totally wrong. And then I'll re-edit it. I think most writing is rewriting. And so it's great to have a story to tell, but you have to be able to tell it well enough so that people will stick with you for, oh my God, like 10 hours is a novel's like, that's a commitment you're asking people to make to you. So I can't write in coffee shops. I really wish I could, but people don't want somebody in the corner reading out loud all the time.
And is it full time now? I mean, this is completely what you do. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. Yeah. Woo, just in the nick of time.
All right. So let's go on to the sexism in this book. Was this something you talked about, it coming from personal experience, but it seems like it's on a different level in the 60s from, so I'm wondering what has been the feedback from readers from this transformation. Are they saying, yes, we see the progress, or are we still seeing quite a bit of the same thing?
Well, I hear from women in labs all over the world, and I think it's a little sad to say a lot of them have said, I am still working in the lab that Elizabeth Zott is working in. I've heard from a lot of people. I also hear from a lot of men, and their comments have been incredibly positive, because I think one thing about the book is that it's not anti-men, it's anti-sexism. And there are a lot of men who, believe it or not, are quite uncomfortable with the sexism at work, but never say anything. So I think, it's been good to hear from them and good to get their input, because as a couple of them have said, there are a lot of really good male allies in the book, like Calvin, Wakely, Walter Pine, Dr. Mason, Roth, the reporter, etc. And if we had more men who were strong allies to women at work, we could be closing this gap on sexism a lot faster than we have. So I'm hoping that with the book, I've heard from a lot of people, and I think, things have progressed from the 60s, but not enough, clearly not enough. Women still aren't paid the same as a man. And they're only the STEM jobs, which are the most lucrative jobs in the world, it's only 30% women. And, not being able to make an impact in STEM, in technology especially, which rules our lives so much of the time now, we need to be there in great number.
Absolutely. I do appreciate Calvin, and I mean, he fell in love with her brain, right? I mean, but he
Yeah.
comes from a background from an orphanage where he didn't have any sort of negativity at him with regards to women as much as, say, some other families might have been. Was that intentional that he would have sort of a clean slate, or is that just him as a character that that was just who he was?
Well, I think he had a lot of shame in his background. He learned, that he'd been adopted. He didn't know that. And he didn't understand, he didn't like being part of this orphanage or in the Catholic Church. And, when you're a kid, you have no choices. Of course, everybody makes your choices for you. And so I think Calvin actually had a pretty rough time of it. And he was so ashamed. He was so certain that he was not lovable, because no one had ever loved him as a child, and no one had ever shown him much kindness, until he became a rower, and then he had friends for the first time. But I think for him, he had a pretty lonely existence. And when you're that smart, I think it's a lonely place to be. So when he met Elizabeth Zott and he found the first person he could actually have a conversation with, that was a really big deal. That was a big moment for Calvin.
All right, you mentioned rowing, so I want to go straight to that.
Okay.
Okay, so I love that it's in this book. Very rarely do we get to read about rowing. I loved Boys in the Boat for this reason, but a friend of mine, right, Heather, who I think is in the chat, she said during quarantine, hey, let's give this a try. There's nothing else to do indoors. Let's give it a go. And so we had to learn in singles. So you couldn't be, with other people. And it's hard. I mean, it's a very hard. So what's your experience? You're obviously a rower, and why did you put it into this novel? Because I loved it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm not a chemist. I'm not a very good cook. I'm not a single mother. And so I wanted to put in something that I knew about, and I know about rowing. So that's one of the reasons. But the other reason I put it in is because rowing is a very collaborative, cooperative sport. It's really hard. It's about perseverance and endurance. It's about experiencing a lot of pain and being willing to go through that pain for the other people in the boat. And I think that is, I wanted to juxtapose that against the typical workplace where we don't always cooperate with each other or communicate well with each other. In a boat, the boat has to, as you would know, it has to be set, it has to be balanced. And if you don't balance the boat, you go for a swim. And I think in the workplace, we have a lot of swimmers. People are constantly disrupting other people's work and things. And it'd be nice, I think, if we could think more like a rower, where you set your ego aside when you leave the dock and you work together seamlessly to get to the finish line. That's the fastest way to get there. But it requires enormous cooperation and no words, by the way. Rowers never talk in the boat.
No. Well, one, I don't know that you could, because it's so exhausting. But two,
Yeah.
It's also the most, if you're in sync, it's the most efficient way to get it done. Not only are you the fastest, but you're so efficient. And as soon as it's unbalanced, you're in trouble,
Yeah.
So I appreciated all of that. And I hope it does get more people trying the sport, because I know in our area, it's really picked up. In North Carolina, I know on the East Coast, it's a little bit more. But when did you learn how to row? When did you start?
I didn't learn until I was 36. We'd moved to Seattle, and I was looking out at the lake, and I saw these people go by in this long, thin boat. I'd never seen rowing. And, I'm tall. And I said to my husband, what are they doing? And he said, that's called rowing. Obviously he'd come from the East Coast. He knew about it, but I'd never seen it. And I lived abroad. I just never seen it. So I went down the next day and I took a learn to row class, and then I rowed and competed since then.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's how things happen. We tried the sport, my friend and I, and her daughter was like, what are y'all doing? Tries it. And now she's going to go row for Alabama next year.
God,
So yeah, it's kind of cool how it all works out. I do love that Elizabeth is starting fresh, 0.0, because that's kind of where we all start, and you gotta, I just love that journey for her. All right, I want to talk next because I know we're going quick on time. 6:30. We know your
Yep.
dog is 99, and someone, I think it was Rajul, I'm sorry if I got the name wrong, no, or Rouge. He wants to know if your own dog inspired 6:30 or what the inspiration was.
My own dog very much inspired 6:30, but it is not 99, unfortunately.
Okay.
99 came after 6:30, and her name is 99 because I had a friend, she and I loved Get Smart as kids, and we always called each other 86 and 99. And I mean, our entire lives, we called each other 86 and 99. And unfortunately, she died in a horrible accident, and I was grieving about losing her for years. And when we adopted this dog, I said, can I name her 99? Because I just missed hearing that. And it just made all the difference. So I feel like I sort of got a little bit of my friend back. But in terms of 6:30, he came first. I didn't think I was going to have a dog with thoughts. When I first started writing out his thoughts, I thought my first instinct was don't go down this road because people say, no, it's magical realism, doesn't happen, blah, blah, blah. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought how interesting it would be to have a character also reporting on Elizabeth, but also reporting on us, a character who we mostly all love. People really love dogs. And he would have opinions about us that fortunately are laced with kindness, but are also very direct about how many terrible decisions we make and how we go about our day and how we spend our time. And so I really enjoyed writing him. But it was, I got a little pushback on that character at first. And I'm really glad I stuck with it because I think that he brings a kind of intelligence. He's the wise one in the book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's almost that omniscient narrator, but he has a body. I mean, he's able to see everyone as they are, like you said, with the layer of kindness, but it's so in the moment, it's so real. And I think he also provides humor that we needed in this novel to take in a lot of the grief, a lot of the despair, a lot of the negativity. And he made that such a great balance for your book. Have you gotten almost all, everybody just seems to love 6:30. Is that what?
So, yeah. It is, as you know, there's a series coming out and I'm going there soon to sit on the set and I'm really excited about it. But we were talking about the dog and I said, 6:30, I think is more beloved than Elizabeth Zott. And I was like, anyway, but honestly, 6:30 was based on my dog, Friday. Super smart dog. We did not know it. We did not teach her words, nothing like that. But we had gotten her from a shelter and she ended up being a cross between Gandhi and Einstein. She was incredible. She'd been so badly abused that her last owner went to jail. So she turned out to teach herself a lot of words. And when we were transferred abroad, she taught herself German. And I'm not kidding. You never think about this, but where the dog grows up, that's the language they learn. You go to France and the dogs understand French. Anyway, she learned German. And we know that for a fact because she passed a German dog test. We weren't there for it, 100% in German for an hour, and she got 100%. Anyway,
really is the inspiration.
No, she is amazing. She was amazing, but she has since passed on. So 6:30 came from Friday.
So you had to really fight for this character. Did you expect the reactions that you're getting? I know Magali wants to know, is this what you expected readers to give you?
No, I think everyone was a little bit afraid. I remember my agent saying, I'm so worried that a review will come out and the Guardian will say this, what a ridiculous idea. She was smart to raise that fear, that idea that it could be a problem. But I felt so strongly about him. And in the Barnes and Noble edition, there's an extra chapter at the very end. It's exclusive edition. It has a chapter that's not in the book. My editors and my agents cut it, but it was called 6:30 and the Moms. And it's how 6:30 learns to be a parent. he observes mothers in a park. And that one chapter, I think I've gotten more feedback on that chapter than any other chapter in the book. So, but you can only get it at Barnes and Noble.
Okay, that's a great lead in. How did you find out that you were getting, and everybody just start clapping. Go ahead. Barnes and Noble Book of the Year.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was shocked. I couldn't believe I was nominated, honestly. They have an editorial board and they have a bookseller board, and these two boards vote differently. And I was told that I was on both lists, which honestly, no, when you're my age, when you're 65, you're like, no, that's not going to happen. And it did. And I think again, it's this idea. I think all of us are so tired of the irrationality in the world. It's kind of nice to spend some time with a really rational character who just doesn't put up with anything. And to have a dog telling you we could be doing better, and things like that. I think it's just a little vacation for people. But also just some ideas in there that, we can really change the world. We really can. We can't give up hope.
I agree. I think that he definitely provides that for us. And while we're doing this, I do some rapid fire questions for you. So you ready, Bonnie?
Yep, I'm ready.
Right. Morning glory or nightshade?
Morning glory.
All right. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, as my family says, supper. What's your favorite?
Oh my God, I can't choose. I love them all.
Okay. Long or short novels?
Long.
Do you like series or standalones?
Series.
All right. Are you a arts or a science major?
Arts.
And what's your favorite book this year?
My favorite book this year. Maureen Fry and the Angel of the North.
Ooh.
By Rachel Joyce. It just came out.
Awesome. We will all check that out. All right. For those of you wanting to ask a question, go ahead. I don't see hands yet. If not, I have so many questions to ask. There is no problem.
Okay.
All right. While we're waiting, I want to know about the movie. The series that's coming out, the casting. I heard there were some issues with rowing as far as the mechanics. And so just give us some tidbits on that and what your role is coming up with it.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not writing it. I do read the scripts and I do, chat with the scriptwriter, Lee Eisenberg, who's just absolutely wonderful. But the thing about a book is very different from the actual movie, because in a book, you imagine everything that I'm telling you to imagine, and on a screen, there it is. And so I love what they're doing. I think they're doing a great job, but it's really different from the book. And I think that that's absolutely fine. They have to redo parts of the book anyway, because every episode has to end on a high note. So you'll keep watching, which is not how a book operates. But it's been really, really fun to work with these guys. They're just wonderful. And I'm really excited for it. But honestly, I'm co-executive producer. And I swear to you, that means do nothing. I'm not doing anything. I just read and I go, or I go, I don't think she'd say that, or something like that. But they are under no obligation to take a word I say. You have to give your child away and walk. So that's what I'm doing.
I think 6:30 though. That's such an interesting concept for a series. It works in the book, but how are they going to make that work?
Okay, I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell you, but I think that the way that they've done it is really cool. When they explained it to me, I was really excited about it, and I'm anxious to see if it works. So we'll see, but it will not be a talking dog, thank God, because I said, please, no talking dog.
All right, and the rowing part, how was that? How did that go? Because it's very specific. It's very technical. Was she able to get it?
I think so. Bree is a super athlete.
Someone asked, it's Brie Larson.
Yes, it's Brie Larson. She is a super athlete, and she had posted herself erging on Instagram, and I was like, oh, that's bad form. That's not how a rower ergs. So I wrote them and I said, can she have a coach? And they did get her a coach, because, it's really easy to erg incorrectly. If you aren't taught, you're probably doing it wrong, and eventually you'll ruin your back. So you don't want to do that. You should always have a coach to really learn how. But yeah, she's been a real sport about this thing. She had to learn how to row. They did not put them in a pair. They put them in a double, much easier. I think a pair would have just been a joke. They would have just been swimming the entire time. So I think it's really, they had to cut out some of the rowing. There's a lot that they have to do, but they are really good sports to do this. They are really good sports to have to learn how to row and erg.
I love it. Kirsten has, looks like from New Hampshire, maybe.
Yeah.
She has a question for you. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight her so we can see her. Go ahead, Kirsten, ask your question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Bonnie. This is so exciting. I am just so thrilled. I literally just finished the book this morning because I knew this was coming. And I mean, I was reading it anyway, but I just finished it this morning just in time. So I'm so excited. But there were so many moments in this book where I literally laughed out loud at more than any other book. And I don't do that usually when I'm reading. And in fact, people around me are like, what is so funny? And I'd be like, oh, I was wondering if you are naturally this funny in real life. Do people tell you you're funny? Are you naturally known as a funny person? Because I found this book just delightfully funny.
Oh, that's very kind. I don't think I'm funny at all. I have worked with a lot of people and written speeches for them. And I always say the same thing. You need a little humor in your speech because, people are falling asleep, and then I'll put something in and they'll deliver the line, but it'll be really deadpan. And it's almost funnier that way, where they kind of tell a joke very badly. And so I have gotten a lot of practice writing that kind of thing, but I have, my favorite reader happens to be my husband. He's very well read. He's fairly critical, and in a good way. But he never laughs at anything either. And so if I see him reading and he kind of goes like this, like, I know it must be really, really funny because he would never laugh otherwise. So he's my test. He's my beta test over there.
I love it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Kirsten. All right. I think Christine had a question. She may have jumped off and may come back. So if she does, raise your hand again. I want to talk about this cover because the US cover and the UK cover are very different. And I'm sure first, let's go back. How many countries is this book published in?
40.
So we're talking, are they 40 different covers or some of them quite similar?
A lot of people in other nations have adopted the British cover. And then some people have just done their own thing. Everybody runs their cover by me. Some I just go, you've got to be kidding. I was kind of like that, honestly, with the US cover. I was just like, that is not Elizabeth Zott. But the thing is, your publishers have a lot of experience in understanding and knowing. Yeah, let me show them this one. Understanding and knowing what their people like. This one is for Estonia. So you just don't know what's going to happen there. Anyway, yeah, the US cover has been quite controversial, actually. Yeah, people don't like that cover. And I'm not really super happy with it either. They did let me change the font. But I did think the imagery is not right. It's too rom-com-y, and the book isn't that, and it misleads some readers into thinking they're going to get a very light-hearted tale with a happy ending and all of that, and that's not what I'm writing. So the good news is Doubleday has very graciously decided to change the paperback cover and maybe consider the British cover. I don't know. What do you guys think? Or an entirely new concept for the cover? Have you seen the covers there? The German cover is beautiful. A lot of really interesting covers out there, but I think the UK cover and the German cover have done really, really well.
Do you have a favorite?
I love the UK cover and the German cover.
Okay. The UK cover, people are asking, it's the one with 4 different colors and there's a TV. And what I liked about it was the element for the word in, which I thought, it's a trigger to say, this is where we are.
Exactly.
Somebody posted, you can check their link. Thank you, Ellen. But it was, to me, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't think it was the best cover that could have portrayed Elizabeth Zott,
Yeah, no, I've gotten some pretty angry emails from people who are looking for a romance, and it's not a romance. And so I understand they feel like they've been misled, and I think Doubleday understands that too now. It's just, and the cover does not invite men in, and we need more men to read this book. And the German cover does invite men in, and consequently, lots of men in Europe read this story.
Yes, I want to invite Jennifer. I'm going to add a spotlight. Jennifer has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura Beth, for putting this together, and Bonnie for participating. That's so kind of you. I do agree on the cover. I've got the US cover. It does look very rom-com, which I don't mind a rom-com now and then, but it's not my go-to genre. And it was another friend that recommended the book. This is the reason I read it. And then, of course, I loved it. My question for you is about Miss Frask, because I had just a very complicated relationship in terms of with reading about her and reading Elizabeth's relationship with her and how they interacted. And I'm just curious how you feel about her.
Well, I love Frask. I love that, you know, she was just one of those women who was going to undercut another woman in order to rise in a man's estimation, when she didn't realize that all women are pretty much in the same boat. If you continue to do that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You need to be helping and supporting each other at work, because you are the underdog at work. So I think Miss Frask had to realize that on her own, and she does, you know, and I think that she changes, and again, Elizabeth is a catalyst, so she's changing Frask and forcing her to realize who she is.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much. I believe we have another question. Magali, I'm going to go ahead and highlight you. Go ahead. You'll need, I don't think we can hear you.
Okay. Hi,
There
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, it's such an honor to meet you. I mean, I just love the book. It's my favorite book this year. This is not related to the book, but I wanted to know if you're doing any tours to the US or regarding the book.
I hope to. I had a very short tour when it came out. I was in New York, Seattle, Toronto, and San Francisco.
Okay.
And then they kind of wait and they see how the book does. But I've been on tour in Europe. I'm going to Italy on Friday, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's great. And yeah, and so I think when the paperback comes out, I'm hopeful that I'll get to come to the US on a real tour.
If you do plan it, please plan to come to Chicago, because that's where I am.
Okay, I would love to come to Chicago.
Thank you so much.
All right. Just one quick question that I always ask. I know you gave your favorite of the year, but a lot of people are asking for your book recommendations. So if you have some that you want to share with us, maybe they're classics, maybe they're right now, maybe they're coming up, we would love to know what you're reading and enjoying.
Well, you know, I'm not a cook. I know, isn't that strange that I wrote this chemist and a cook and I'm not, well, anyway, but there is this one cookbook. Well, there are two that I'd like to recommend, but there's this one cookbook called Bread Song. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's UK based, but you've got to get this book. It's about a daughter, a dad and his daughter, and she slips into this kind of depression when she's a teenager. She's 14 years old and she can't go to school. She's this brilliant kid and she can't work anymore. And he slowly sees his daughter, you know, sailing away. I mean, it's frightening. And the only thing that brings her back is learning how to bake bread. This is a real true story. They have their own bakery outside of London. And I highly recommend this book. It's called Bread Song. Let's see, what else? I've read a whole bunch of books that are coming out next year that I know all about, but I really enjoyed this year Andy Greer's book, Less is Lost. I don't know if you read Less, but I really enjoyed that. And Less is Lost is a sequel. So I'm really mad at him because he wrote a good sequel. Oh, and so did Rachel Joyce. So there you go. That's just pressure, pressure, pressure. But those are really, really good books. And then I'm looking over here at my, this came out the year before last, so I can't mention it, but it was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I really enjoyed that. I'm looking I have books piled. Oh, okay, wait. I have a nonfiction book I want to recommend to everyone. It's called The Authority Gap. And this is where I didn't read this book until after my book was published, but the studies in here will tell you why women still aren't equal at work. And it's amazing. It's a really, really well-written book. But the best part about it is that at the end, she tells you what we can do about it and what men can do about it too, because I think there are some men who are trying to change things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to just say you were a wonderful guest. I know we all had such a great time. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, readers, for joining. Please make sure and check out her website, her Instagram, follow her. And if you would, follow me, the LBs, the Lover of Books. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I should have this recording on YouTube. So you can feel free to subscribe there. Next Sunday, November 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm hosting author Shelby Van Pelt for her debut novel, Remarkably Bright Creatures. Lots of claps there. Talk about, this is perfect because another creature with the voice. So this time an octopus. So it's also fantastic. I will say your audiobook was phenomenal. Loved the narrator. And
She was British.
Oh,
could you tell? I mean, she was great. Yeah.
No, fantastic. And also the audiobook coming up for Remarkably Bright Creatures is Maren Ireland, and she does a phenomenal job as well. So for fans of A Man Called Uwe, this is a luminous debut novel about a widow's unlikely friendship with a giant Pacific octopus reluctantly residing at a local aquarium, and the truth she finally uncovers about her son's disappearance 30 years ago. I wholeheartedly agree. Washington Post says Remarkably Bright Creatures is an ultimately feel-good but deceptively sensitive debut, memorable and tender. So join us next Sunday. Thank you, Mike, for running behind the scenes. If you know of an author you would like to chat with, send them to me, and I hope to see everybody next week. Again, thanks, Bonnie. We love you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And hopefully
Thanks
we'll
for
see you
having me.
this. Have a good
All
one.
right.
Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye-bye.